They blindfolded a tiny German Shepherd puppy and left him on the highway with nothing but a suitcase. But what he kept waiting for will shatter your heart. A story of loyalty, pain, and the one reunion that changed everything. If you believe every abandoned soul deserves a second chance, then please subscribe to this channel. Because here, every story is more than just a video, it's a voice for the voiceless. The sun had barely begun to rise over the scorched stretch of asphalt winding through the outskirts of Los Angeles. The kind of road people took when they wanted to go unnoticed, the back route, the shortcut, the place where secrets were buried under the roar of speeding tires. And that's where they left him. A trembling German Shepherd puppy, no older than 4 months. Blindfolded with a strip of dirty fabric tied tight across his eyes. Beside him, an old green suitcase, fraying at the edges, zipped shut. Inside it, no food, no water, no blanket. Just a torn piece of notebook paper. No name, no reason. Just a single sentence written in shaky ink. Do not trust him. He bites. He didn't cry. Not at first. Maybe he knew it wouldn't matter. Maybe something in him had already learned what betrayal felt like. He sat, ears twitching at the rush of cars flying by, heart hammering in his chest like it wanted to outrun whatever had just happened to him. But he didn't run. He waited. People passed. Drivers slowed down just enough to look, maybe even gasp. But nobody stopped. Because that's what people do with things they don't understand. They keep driving. Until a white Toyota Camry pulled over. Inside was Lena Reyes, a veterinary tech on her way home from an overnight shift. She hadn't even seen the puppy at first, just the strange shape of a suitcase near the guardrail. But as she got closer, her headlights caught the shimmer of a reflective collar, and her chest tightened. No, 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 she muttered, slamming the door behind her as she stepped out. Please don't be what I think this is. The sight stopped her cold. A puppy, blindfolded, stiff with fear. His body didn't move when she approached. Only his nose lifted, sniffing frantically, desperate to understand this new presence. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just leaned, as if he knew she was different. Lena knelt, voice trembling. Hey, buddy, hey. I'm not going to hurt you. Her fingers worked quickly, untying the filthy cloth. The moment the blindfold slipped free, the puppy flinched from the sunlight, blinking hard, squinting at her, as though trying to decide if she was real. And then he collapsed forward. Not from injury, but relief. Lena caught him just before he hit the gravel. She gathered him into her arms, all trembling limbs and racing heartbeat, and for the first time since the night began, the puppy made sound. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't a growl. It was something closer to a sigh, a quiet, breathy whimper, the kind you hear from a soul that's been holding its breath too long. Lena didn't even open the suitcase until she got home. She wrapped him in a towel, gave him water drop by drop with a syringe, and watched him sleep curled up in a corner of her bathroom, as if the tile beneath him was more comfort than anything he'd known. Only when he was safe did she unzip the suitcase. Inside was the note. A leash. A collar engraved with the word DX. And a child's drawing. A stick figure girl. A dog beside her, bigger than she was. They were smiling. But someone had scribbled a red X over the dog's face. Hard. Angry. Lena stared at it for a long time, hands shaking. This wasn't abandonment. This was something else. A decision. A sentence. Someone had decided that Dex didn't deserve another chance. But Lena disagreed. She documented everything. The location. The state of the puppy. The suitcase contents. Photos. Videos. She emailed the local rescue group she volunteered for, Paw Haven Rescue, and asked them for an emergency intake. They were full. Overfull. Still, she got a response. Bring him in tomorrow. We'll make room. So she spent that night on the bathroom floor, her hand resting near Dex's trembling body, not touching, just close enough for him to know he wasn't alone. By morning, he hadn't moved, but he was watching. His eyes, a deep shade of amber, tracked her every step. He didn't blink much, didn't wag, but he was alert, listening, waiting. When Lena reached for the leash from the suitcase, Dex stiffened. His whole body went rigid, but he didn't bite. He just laid his head down and stared at the leash like it was a ghost. Lena didn't clip it on. Instead, she whispered, "Okay, no leash today." She carried him out gently, swaddled like a newborn, into the back seat of her car. And he let her, not because he trusted her yet, but because, somehow, his body already knew that leaving was safer than staying. At Paw Haven Rescue, Dex's story spread like fire. Staff gathered around the intake room, silent as Lena showed the blindfold, the drawing, the note. Volunteers cried. Even Maya, the hardened director of the shelter, had to step outside to collect herself. "He's not just a rescue," Lena said. "He's a message." Maya nodded. "We'll keep him off the adoption floor for now. Let's just focus on helping him feel like a dog again." But that was the problem. Dex didn't act like a puppy. He didn't chew, didn't bark, didn't play. He didn't react to treats or toys. The only thing he responded to, even slightly, was the sound of a zipper. Every time he heard it, his head would turn sharply, ears tilted, like he was waiting for something. Or someone. And that's when Lena realized Dex wasn't just healing. He was still waiting. Dex didn't bark for 3 weeks. He didn't whine. He didn't make a single sound. He would sit in his kennel like a statue, unmoving, unblinking, his amber eyes fixated on the door as if any second someone might walk through and explain everything. Someone who never came. Maya assigned Lena to Dex's recovery case. She was already fostering another dog, but Dex needed more than a roof and food. He needed silence, patience, someone who didn't demand trust, but earned it, slowly. So Lena made space. She cleared out a small guest room, piled soft blankets along the floor, left water and food in the corner. She didn't force anything. The first night, Dex refused to sleep. He stood by the window, staring through the slats like he was memorizing the outside world, as though it might vanish again. The second night, Lena found him curled around the suitcase. He had dragged it from where she'd stored it in the closet, silently, carefully, and rested his chin on it, like a soldier guarding something sacred. She didn't move it again after that. There were moments, brief flashes, where the puppy beneath the trauma peeked through. A head tilt when Lena hummed a lullaby in the kitchen. A twitch of the ear when her other dog, a golden retriever named Maxie, tried to nudge a tennis ball toward him. Even a soft sigh when she read aloud near his door, her voice calm, steady, pretending not to notice that he had slowly crept a few inches closer every night. But the moment someone knocked at the door, or worse, raised their voice, Dex would vanish. He'd retreat under the bed, trembling violently, his teeth bared in terror. Not aggression, fear so deep it felt like it had claws. Lena documented everything in a notebook. Day 7, Dex sniffed my hand today. Didn't lick. Didn't flinch. Just sniffed. Day 10, I zipped my hoodie. He stood up. Stared. Tail wagged once. Then he stopped. Day 13, I opened the suitcase. He didn't growl. Just watched. Inside, the drawing again. I showed it to him. He nudged it with his nose. I swear, he remembered her. Then came day 15. It was raining. The kind of California rain that felt personal, heavy, relentless, like the sky itself was grieving. Lena was cleaning out the bathroom when she heard something. Not loud, not sharp, just soft. A bark. Her heart stopped. She dropped the towel, sprinted to Dex's room. And there he was, sitting in the middle of the floor, looking directly at her. His tail tapped the ground once. One soft bark. One. Lena dropped to her knees, tears already spilling down her cheeks. "Oh my God, Dex," she whispered. "You can bark." He looked confused, almost guilty, like he didn't mean to let it slip. She didn't rush him. She didn't smother him in celebration. She just sat on the floor, across from him, and whispered, "You don't have to be silent anymore." That night, he slept next to her bed, not in it, not touching, just close enough for her to hear him breathe. The recovery wasn't linear. Week 4 brought a setback. A group of volunteers came to meet the foster dogs. One of them, a man with a heavy voice and thick boots, stepped into Dex's room without knocking. Dex panicked. He lunged, not to attack, but to escape. He hurled himself into the corner, knocking over a lamp, scraping his leg on the edge of the dresser. Blood pooled on the tile before Lena could reach him. It wasn't a bite. It wasn't even close. But the man panicked. "He's dangerous," he shouted. "You saw the note." Lena didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She just wrapped Dex in a towel, his body trembling in her arms, and carried him out. Away. Safe. "I don't care what that note said," she whispered into his fur, heart pounding. "You are not broken." But others didn't agree. A report was filed. Shelter policy required evaluation. Maya, torn between protocol and heart, arranged for Dex to be assessed by a behaviorist. And that's when Dr. Adrian Velasquez entered the picture. A retired canine trauma specialist, Adrian had worked with police dogs, military rescues, even courtroom therapy animals. He had a quiet way about him. Measured. Respectful. The first time he met Dex, he didn't bring treats. Didn't speak. He just sat. For 40 minutes. Dex didn't approach. Didn't growl. Just watched him. At the end, Adrian stood and said, "He's not violent. He's waiting." Maya frowned. Waiting for what? But Adrian just shrugged. "You'd have to ask his heart." That's when things began to shift. Adrian started coming twice a week. He brought a small blue rope toy. Not to play with, but to place near Dex's bed. Every visit, he moved it closer. On the 4th visit, Dex picked it up. Not for long. Just a second. But enough. Adrian smiled. "There you are." Lena wasn't sure what had changed. Maybe it was the consistency. Maybe it was the respect. Maybe it was the fact that for once, someone saw past the suitcase, past the note, past the red X. And then, one morning, something happened that none of them expected. Dex pawed at the closet door. The one where the suitcase was now kept. He barked twice, then sat. Lena opened it. He nudged the suitcase, looked up at her, then back at the door. And that's when Lena realized. He wanted to go. To where? She didn't know. But Dex remembered something. Something powerful enough to keep him waiting. Hoping. Listening to the sound of every zipper like it might mean her again, the little girl from the drawing. The one who smiled beside him. The one who never came back. It started with a torn shoelace. Lena had been organizing the suitcase again, careful not to shift anything Dex had placed just so, when she noticed the tiny, knotted lace buried under the edge of the crayon drawing. Worn, frayed, like it had been pulled out by small, impatient hands. On instinct, she brought it to Dex. He sniffed it once, then froze. Eyes wide, muscles tense, as if that one scent had cracked something inside him. And then the whimper. Not loud, not even desperate, just mournful. He licked the lace, gently, and then turned toward the door, barking twice. Then sitting. He was trying to go somewhere. And now, Lena realized he had a reason. Lena contacted Maya, then Adrian. They ran the drawing through missing persons records, through shelter databases, even tried facial recognition through a nonprofit agency that helped track abandoned animals with suspected child connections. Nothing. But then Adrian asked a question no one had thought of yet. What if the drawing wasn't done by the girl, but for her? The idea stunned everyone. Maybe she wasn't just with the dog. Maybe the dog was hers, a gift, a promise, a silent protector drawn by someone who once said, "He'll keep you safe." They shifted focus. Lena scanned online forums for runaways, foster kids, missing school records. She contacted local teachers, community centers, even child psychologists who worked with kids in the foster system. And then, 2 weeks later, a breakthrough. A school nurse in Ventura recognized the drawing. She couldn't be certain, but she remembered a second-grade girl, quiet, withdrawn, with a long scar above her left wrist, who always drew dogs. The same coloring, Same shape. She'd been pulled from school 5 months ago. The records listed her as relocated. No last forwarding address. Her name? Rosie. Dex recognized the name immediately. Lena hadn't meant to say it in front of him. She was reading an email when she whispered it aloud. Rosie. Could that be her? Dex stood up. He barked once, then twice, and then sat, staring at the suitcase. Lena didn't hesitate. She opened the case, took out the lace, and handed it to him. He licked it, then walked to the door and waited. The trip to Ventura was quiet. Dex sat in the back of Adrian's car, suitcase beside him, unmoving. The kind of stillness that wasn't fear anymore, but focus, memory, purpose. Lena had packed water, food, and the drawing. They weren't sure what they'd find. The school nurse had only a partial address, a temporary group home near the edge of town. By the time they arrived, the facility had already been shut down. Funding cuts, poor conditions, children relocated. Again. But as Adrian turned the car to leave, Dex suddenly barked. Loud, clear, twice. Then again. He jumped up, pressing his paws to the window, whining and then howling. It wasn't random. It was grief. The parking lot behind the old building was overgrown. Fences twisted. Graffiti scrawled across the brick walls. Lena got out first, unsure what Dex had sensed. But Dex didn't hesitate. He ran, straight to the edge of the building, toward a small pile of discarded items, an old cot, some trash bags, a torn-up plush toy, and then he froze. Beneath the garbage, half buried in dirt, was a child's sock. Tiny, pink, threadbare. He picked it up with his mouth, gently, carried it back to Lena and placed it at her feet, then sat and looked up, as if to say this was hers. That night, none of them slept. Lena couldn't stop thinking about it, how the sock could have survived, how Dex knew, and what it meant if Rosie had lived there. What happened to her? Maya made calls. Adrian tapped old contacts in social work. And then came the truth. Rosie had been placed into emergency protective custody 5 months ago. Her mother, unstable, reportedly violent, had vanished with her shortly after. An Amber Alert had been issued, but was quietly dropped after no leads emerged. No one had seen Rosie since. Except maybe Dex. The next day, Lena tried something bold. She showed Dex a map, printed on thick paper, with red marks along all the known stops Rosie's mother had made. She laid it flat in front of him, then pointed. Where? She whispered. Where did you last see her? Dex didn't respond. Not at first. But then, slowly, he lowered his nose and touched a spot near the edge of the map. A gas station. Highway 118. Abandoned rest stop. A place Maya confirmed had been flagged in the case. Rosie's mother's car was seen there on a security camera 2 weeks before everything went dark. The next morning, Lena packed the car again. Water, food, first aid, suitcase. Dex leapt in without hesitation. It was a long drive. Dusty, dry, the kind of forgotten part of California that felt suspended in time. The gas station was empty. Abandoned, like everything else Rosie had been left with. But Dex didn't care. He leapt from the car and sniffed the air like he was breathing in pieces of the past. His nose worked furiously, darting between the pump stations, the trash cans, the loading dock. And then he stopped. He barked once, then scratched at the dirt. Adrian came over with a shovel. What they found wasn't Rosie, but it was something. A half-buried box. Tiny. Child's shoebox. Inside, a crayon. A hair tie. A single photograph. A girl, maybe 7, holding Dex as a puppy. No one had smiles in the photo, but they were together. And Dex, even in the photo, looked alive. Lena broke. She sat on the ground, holding the box, sobbing. Adrian crouched beside her, silent. Dex sat too, quietly, still, but his tail wagged. Once, because he remembered. That night, they camped near the rest stop. A ranger warned them coyotes had been active nearby, so they built a small fire. Lena curled in her sleeping bag, Dex beside her. He didn't sleep. He watched the road. All night. Because maybe, just maybe, Rosie had watched it too. Somewhere, out there, she was waiting. Just like him. And neither of them had given up. Not yet. The wind rolled cold across the old rest stop. Morning sun peeked through clouds, as if ashamed to touch the broken gas station canopy. Lena shivered in her hoodie, her hands wrapped around a thermos of bitter coffee, watching Dex sniff along the edge of the gravel lot for the 100th time. He didn't bark, didn't whine, but his body language said everything. He knew she'd been here, and maybe, just maybe, he thought she might come back. Maybe he thinks this place is sacred, Adrian said softly, adjusting the drone controller in his lap. Or maybe he's guarding it. Like a shrine. Lena looked down at the crumpled photograph they'd found in the shoebox. Rosie, maybe age 7, dark brown eyes, thin arms wrapped tight around a younger Dex, his ears floppy, his coat just starting to darken into those strong shepherd colors. The way she held him, it wasn't casual. It was clinging, as if she'd already lost too much. They gave Dex more time. A full week. 7 long days at the edge of Highway 118, parked outside a collapsed piece of someone's lost childhood. Lena made flyers. Adrian set up game cams, even reached out to private investigators who specialized in missing children. But the world outside didn't care. The few travelers that stopped didn't recognize Rosie. One elderly woman handed Lena a $10 bill, thinking they were collecting donations for a cause. Another just shrugged. Kids disappear all the time, she said. That's just how it is. But Dex didn't believe that. Every sunset, he sat by the same spot, near the dry grass where the shoebox was buried, his suitcase beside him, unopened, as if he still wanted to give it back to her. On the 8th morning, it changed. Dex didn't go to the shrine. Instead, he stood by the car. Lena was brushing her teeth at the edge of the brush line when she saw him, tail stiff, ears forward, eyes focused. She walked over. What is it, boy? He pawed the ground twice, then whined. Adrian stirred in the back seat, groggy. You think he's got a scent? Dex didn't wait. He trotted forward, toward the highway, but not on it. Beside it, he was following something. Something only he could smell. They moved fast. Adrian drove slowly behind, while Lena jogged ahead, suitcase in hand, trying to keep up with Dex's swift trot. Every few minutes he paused, nose twitching, then adjusted his direction. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Half a mile in, they found the first sign. A tiny scrap of blue fabric tangled on a thorn bush. Kids' pajama material. Faded stars on it. Dex stopped and howled. A long, aching sound that cracked something deep inside Lena's chest. She knelt, untangled the fabric, and brought it close to Dex. He sniffed it hard, then barked, spun, and raced forward again. He led them another 3 miles. Up a service trail, through dense brush, and finally into a clearing behind a chain-link fence. An old trailer sat rusting in the middle of the weeds, surrounded by garbage bags and torn tarps. Adrian parked. Lena's heart pounded. Dex froze, ears up, tail low. A shape stirred at the trailer door. Then it opened, and a woman stepped out. She looked older than she probably was. Gaunt, sun-damaged skin, arms covered in faded tattoos and thin, white scars. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her stance wasn't aggressive, but she clutched something in her hand. A belt, hanging loose by her side. Lena stepped forward. I'm not here to hurt you. The woman squinted. You the cops? No. We're just looking for someone. The woman's gaze flicked toward Dex and narrowed. That your dog? No. He's hers. Whose? A girl named Rosie. Everything stopped. Even the wind. The woman's face twitched. Her hand clenched tighter around the belt. Then she turned. Walked back into the trailer. Lena's breath caught. And then, a child's voice. Mama? Who's at the door? Dex sprinted. Lena didn't have time to react. He cleared the fence, a full leap, suitcase forgotten behind him. Adrian yelled. Lena ran forward, but Dex didn't attack. He whimpered. A tiny figure stepped into the trailer doorway. Thin arms, tangled dark hair, Band-Aid on her cheek, mismatched shoes. Her eyes widened. Dex! The dog whimpered again, crawled low to the ground, his whole body shaking. And then he jumped, not in aggression, but in joy, bounding toward her like his legs couldn't move fast enough. Rosie dropped to her knees just in time, and Dex buried himself in her lap. For a long moment, everything stopped. The wind faded. The sun warmed. And in that broken lot surrounded by garbage and silence, one girl and one dog came back together like they'd never been apart. Rosie sobbed into his fur, her small hands gripping the thick folds of his neck. Dex licked her face, whimpered, spun in circles, then tucked himself under her arm like he was a puppy again, like he'd never stopped being hers. And maybe, in his heart, he hadn't. The woman reappeared in the doorway, but she didn't speak. She just looked down, at Rosie, at Dex, and stepped aside. For the first time, Lena saw it. Shame. Not anger. Not madness. Shame. I thought he'd slow us down, the woman whispered. So I left him at the highway. Rosie looked up. You blindfolded him. I thought he'd forget. Lena's voice broke. He didn't. That night, social services arrived. Quietly. No flashing lights. No sirens. Just one car, one caseworker, and soft-spoken words. The woman didn't resist. Rosie didn't let go of Dex the entire ride back. When they stopped at the rest station one last time to retrieve the suitcase, Rosie recognized it immediately. My coloring stuff, she whispered, hugging it to her chest. I left it with him. Why? Lena asked gently. Rosie looked down. So he wouldn't feel like he had nothing. But Dex never cared about what was in the suitcase. He only ever cared about the one who packed it. 3 weeks later, the world had moved on. But he hadn't. Dex still woke up before dawn, ears twitching, eyes darting to the door. Every morning, he checked the corners of the apartment, then curled back beside Rosie's bed, always watching, always guarding, just in case someone tried to take her again. Because in his mind, she was still in danger. And maybe, in some ways, she still was. Rosie had been placed in a temporary foster home with Lena and Adrian. Not permanently, just until paperwork goes through, they'd said. But neither Lena nor Rosie ever counted the days. They didn't have to. Love doesn't always wait for signatures. Some things just click. Rosie drew pictures of Dex every day, some with him flying, others with him wearing cape, sometimes even with Lena and Adrian drawn as rescue heroes in matching hats. But Dex? He never touched the suitcase. Not once. It sat untouched in the corner of the room, still tied in the same knot Rosie had looped through the handle years ago, as if he knew it was finally safe to leave it shut. Because the person who packed it was here now. One afternoon, it rained. Hard. Thunder cracked, and the wind howled. Rosie's drawings taped to the window fluttered, and the lights flickered twice. Lena was cooking when she heard a scream. She dropped the spoon, ran into Rosie's room. Dex was already there, standing stiffly over Rosie, who was curled into a ball, hands over her ears, crying. Her body shook as she gasped, unable to speak. Dex didn't bark. He didn't panic. He just pressed his body around her like a shield, nose nudging her cheek gently, paw resting on her chest, as if saying, breathe. I'm here, it's okay. Lena dropped beside them and pulled Rosie into her arms. It's okay, baby, it's just the storm. Rosie clutched Dex's neck and whispered through sobs. I thought she was back. That night, Lena didn't sleep. She stayed on the floor beside Rosie's bed, her hand resting on Dex's back. He didn't move all night. Not once. Because this was what he'd waited for. Not rescue. Not safety. But to be needed. A few days later, a letter came. It was from the court. Rosie's birth mother had signed away parental rights. The letter also included something else. A photo. An old Polaroid, crumpled but intact, showing Rosie as a toddler. Younger than even Lena had seen her, sitting in a sandbox, Dex a tiny blur beside her. And in the corner, a faint scribble. In a child's handwriting, Dex, wait for me. Lena traced the words with trembling fingers. He hadn't waited by accident. He had waited because he promised. Adrian built Dex a doghouse in the backyard. Not because Dex wanted to sleep outside. He didn't, but because Rosie insisted he have his own castle. They painted it together. Red walls, blue roof, a crooked heart above the doorway. Rosie named it Fort Dex. Inside, she put two things, the suitcase and a folded note. It read, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Dex laid his paw on it every night. One morning, they took a walk through the hills behind their new neighborhood. The sky was clear. Rosie skipped ahead, singing to herself, and Dex stayed close, tail wagging. They reached a high overlook where the trees opened up and the highway below stretched like a memory across the valley. Rosie pointed. "Is that where you waited, Dex?" He looked, didn't bark, didn't move, but his ears lifted, just slightly, as if he remembered. She crouched and hugged him tight. "You don't have to wait anymore. I'm here." And for the first time, he didn't look back. Months passed. Rosie started school. Lena officially adopted her. Dex went with them to sign the papers, wearing a little bow tie Rosie had picked out just for him. The clerk tried not to laugh, but Lena didn't stop her tears. The judge said it was the quietest, calmest child adoption hearing she'd ever seen. Rosie only spoke once. "Can Dex be my brother now?" The judge smiled. "He already is." One cold evening, Lena found Rosie asleep in her bed, Dex curled up at her feet. The suitcase sat on the floor, finally opened. Inside were three things. A half-color drawing of Rosie and Dex under a rainbow. A crumpled dog tag with Dex's baby photo engraved on it. A new drawing, freshly made. Rosie, Lena, Adrian, and Dex all holding hands with the word home in big block letters above them. Lena didn't say a word. She just sat there, hand over her mouth, watching Dex sleep peacefully for the first time since the day they found him. No more guard dog. No more blindfolds. No more waiting. The world had given up on Rosie, but he never did. Even when she was taken, even when the lights went out, even when a hand covered his eyes and a suitcase replaced her scent, he waited. For her voice. For her touch. For her return. Because some dogs don't just protect. They remember. And they wait. As long as it takes.